to the final C&I committee meeting of this school year. And as you know, the meeting is being recorded. And I'm going to turn it over to our chairperson, Susan Cadio Hernandez, who's going to read our oral communications.
Good afternoon. Stated the following as a difficult. I want to thank the C&I committee for their work this school year. That understandably been a hard year, and our volunteer members have shown incredible dedication. This is the last meeting for the year. I want to ask the members this year. Did you meet the goals you set out to when you first joined the committee? If not, I would urge you that this is reflected upon on how to make this committee more effective in reaching its goals. One such area that both committee members and the public have shown great interest in making FUSD curriculum anti-racist. For showing its initiative in creating the anti-racist subcommittee, and I hope that this committee will continue working in the summer. It's only been a month since it formed to tackle a very complex topic. Second. Comment is from Amal Navan. I have enjoyed hearing updates from the anti-racism subcommittee. They have done a lot of research and crafted recommendations in little time. The C&I committee has many topics to cover. A month is not enough time to learn, do research, and craft recommendations. Racism subcommittee efficacy. I'm hopeful that subcommittees can become the C&I committee's modus operandi moving forward. A few topics of interest to form. Those subcommittees can get guidance from C&I during monthly meetings and work in smaller groups in between. Anti-racism subcommittee can talk about what went well, talk about what's ongoing that they hope to continue in the summer, thoughts on subcommittees being C&I's modus operandi moving forward. It is from an anonymous person. The subcommittee is doing really important work, more equitable and inclusive. But they only covered a few of the important issues C&I committee raised in terms of anti-racism. It continues their work in the summer. Anti-racism cannot wait. Is an anonymous comment. Second. Computer froze again. Okay. Is an anonymous comment. The C&I Advisory Committee's laws article X B, it says, quote, the committee shall report as necessary to carry out the charge of the committee of education an annual report each school year, end of quote. I do not see a discussion about this annual report in today's agenda, and it is the last meeting of the school year. Public clarity on how this annual report will get created, able to provide feedback and or take the part in the process of creating it, and how the public may provide comments on it. The committee has done so much important work this year, and I'm sure the public, as well as the trustees, would love to see the annual report that this committee will present to the Board of Education this school year. From Megha Govindu. She's a student at American High School. Hello, committee members. My name is Megha, and I'm a current junior at American. Despite the C&I committee's break during the summer, I strongly urge the subcommittee to continue its anti-racist work over the summer and into the school year. Time is very long overdue, and the impact of this important work shall not be disrupted by breaks. To be done, so the summer break should be maximized to do so. Constantly reaching out to teachers to anti-racist curriculum. Support is needed to mandate these changes. Thank you for remaining committed to the advocacy, advocating anti-racism in FUSD. Next comment and final comment is from Katie Chin. She's an FUSD parent of elementary children. The teacher shared her class results doing iReady presentation. I was struck by the range of skills class. What resources beyond those provided by the adopted curricula does the district have available to support teachers in differentiation? I have not seen the below-level support, but the extensions in math seem to be simply busy work for fast finishers, but not true enrichment. Has someone created a central database of digital or library books aligned with the benchmark units that would give young fluent readers who want to read more about the topic a way to engage more fully in the unit rather than being turned off by the simple text? Is there a central common to-go spot in the district for teachers to accent certain types of differentiation materials? Public comments. So our next item on the agenda is I'd like everyone to review that you should have reviewed the minutes from the April 20th meeting. And I have to approve it as corrected if needed. 20th.
Susan, I'm sorry, just a point of order for the 440 agenda item for, the link to the bylaws. I'm wondering if now would be appropriate. I know I've said it before, but I see Trustee Prasad is here. This came up at the board meeting with the adoption. And since our bylaws does note that we would review items and offer recommendations for things that are upcoming on agendas, I'm wondering if we, could have a discussion about being in accordance with our bylaws and having things come through the committee that are going to be going forward. And maybe Trustee Prasad could share a little bit. What I gathered was that while we have staff look at things like adoption and the adoption process, it might be appropriate to have community parents also weigh in a committee like this, even if it's only on our agenda for 10 or 15 minutes. It would mean this committee and all of the parents that are on it, in particular, student as well, would get that link to those documents, because I know, Kim, you noted, we put it on the website, we did all the things that we normally do, and this would just be kind of one additional outreach and avenue where parents might get that further heads up, and at least we'd have a few representative parents who could weigh in and have that opportunity. But I don't know, Trustee Prasad, because I don't want to mischaracterize your thoughts on it, but that was kind of when I was listening to it, I was like, I think people are really excited about this curriculum for social studies. And I hate to have it feel negative because we didn't, just give more outreach, but maybe curriculum and instruction as the committee is an appropriate place to just have it agendized for a few minutes, and then parents on this committee and public comment could be taken specifically on anything that's coming forward regarding curriculum.
Yes, actually, I agree that if I were to paraphrase the board discussion, there were some, during the open communication, there was some concern raised by some parents that they didn't have a chance to look at it. And when a major change like this is coming through, and I think the committee spent a lot of time, even before I joined the team here, so there should be some proactive reach out to get some impact analysis. I don't know if the bylaws, how does that impact the bylaws that we have here? But it would have been more proactive as a team here to have done that reach out and provided the board with a more comprehensive packet so that the questions would have been eliminated altogether. That's why the comment I made was, even I was remiss and I didn't ask over here for something as major as the social studies curriculum, whether we had the right level of feedback from all the stakeholders.
So I'm going to ask Shilpa if she'll just note that in the minutes, the request from Victoria and the response from Trustee Prasad. Thank you all very much for that. And then I'm going to see if we can get back onto the agenda. We are working on a pretty tight timeline tonight.
Yes,
Susan, I'm going to hand it back.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, thank you. And please note that in the minutes, please, because Kim is right. We have a very packed agenda tonight. In all due respect, we have to be very cognizant of our time tonight. However, we will in a minute. Thank you so much.
Sorry,
In the minutes.
Sorry, Susan, it should be in the minutes on the 440, which is linked to the bylaws. So it is agendized. You've planned 5 minutes for that. So it would be part of the discussion for today's agenda.
Okay, are we ready to look at minutes?
Are there any corrections to the minutes? Is there a motion to approve as corrected if needed?
So any objection to approving as is, because we don't have any corrections. So any objection, we just leave it like it is.
Okay, minutes approved. All right, our next topic on our agenda is the Equity Committee report, and Stacy is our representative from C&I. And Stacy, would you like to give your report from the last meeting that you attended?
Hi, everyone. So I don't have much to report as it was only our second meeting. And hopefully if I get appointed to this committee again next year, I can stay in this role as the representative on the Equity Committee, because I really feel we're going to start moving into why this committee was created. But the last couple of months has just been more getting to know and setting it up, the committee. We spent the bulk of our committee meeting last month getting an overview from Steve Musto on assessments and different types of data like the PSAT, SATs, and what goes into pulling things to do with like overall what to expect when we are looking at data in that retrospect. And then we spent the rest of the remaining time looking over board policy 0415. So Greg Bailey was able to present it at the school board meeting. So that is my report. Hopefully I will take notes, and like I said, I will get reappointed, so then I will have a report next time. If not, I'll send something in if I'm not appointed. Thank you.
See. Our next item on the agenda is the Anti-Racism Subcommittee report, and Victoria is going to give information on had recently.
Thank you so much, Susan. So I shared the link to this document in the chat as well, and then Shilpa, if you could copy it and put it into the minutes, but it is being screen shared for you. So we're bringing 4 recommendations to the committee now for your approval. And so first, we did discuss ethnic studies, more just picking up where the committee left off. And our recommendations now, which are coming to you as the C&I committee, and once you approve, those would be part of the recommendations that would go to the school board. So first, for ethnic studies, just learning more about what the process is for being mandatory. Now, some of that work could be getting done at the district level, coming through the pipeline. So we would learn about where it is kind of in that stage, which might be in the legislature, and also what other school districts have done. So just learning more about it. That would be one. Secondly, and that's at the secondary level, is where we've seen that, but maybe there's more to be learned there. Secondly, for elementary inclusion, through arts and interactive activities mostly, but things that are done district-wide. So in a more systematic way at the elementary level, because right now we have teachers who have an amazing, plethora of things they've developed over the years, or they have parents that are able to help, but it's really hit and miss and not done district-wide or in a systematic way. So just again, looking into what that might look like is part 2 of that. And then picking up directly with the presentation that we received. We recommend that that FUSD work with what we received and learned about as the working document for developing our own unique FUSD versions for ethnic studies across our district. We know that it would only be elective offerings for now, and that could be a possible stepping stone as it becomes a mandatory course either by FUSD decision or because of a state mandate. And then it will also provide the opportunity to incorporate cultural elements. It was important for us to recognize that not everything can be done through literature or ELA adoptions, but to fully engage all students, that there are other cultural elements like music and dance. So that comprises the first recommendation. So I want to take any questions, and now would also be the time if you have any objection to this recommendation. Susan?
Can you do, because of my eyes, can you enlarge it? Because it's really small print and it's kind of hard. If you can enlarge it just a little bit.
I will definitely do my.
I'm sorry.
No, not at all. And I also shared this link with you as well, but I know it's hard.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's perfect.
No, and I have an extra large monitor in front of me, so sometimes I lose perspective of how big it is for other people looking. So thank you. Any questions or objection to making this recommendation to this school district?
So can I just clarify something? So what's happening here is you guys are going to present your recommendations, and then once we get to that part of the meeting, we're going to I'm going to have people work and think through all of the different presentations that we saw during the year. And we're going to do that in small groups. Then we're going to come back and we're going to kind of agree on what our recommendations might be for the board. So I think it's premature to ask people to agree on these right now, but I've already linked this recommendation document to what those small groups will be looking at, and they won't be making final decisions. We'll make that as a whole group, but as part of that later conversation.
Kim, and that might have been one of the questions from the public. I don't see where there's an action item for making recommendations as a whole, but this is an action item, not a report. It is our recommendations. So however you want to have people say whether they're objections or not, but we do need a yes or no then on our 4 items. So however, whether it's done at another item, but I didn't see if under recap you want people to voice objection coming out of recap.
That's what the recap's going to be.
Okay. All right.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. All right. And then the second item that we discussed, which the school board is having their own special meeting specifically on the expanded learning opportunity grant funds. So we made a few recommendations really just stemming from our discussions about furthering anti-racism in curriculum and instruction. So first of all, as part of the recommendation from ethnic studies, any costs for, say, working groups for teachers and students and staff to be coming together to create those unique working documents for ethnic studies, we would recommend that as part of the elective program and expanded learning that the district falls under the ELOG funds. We then talked about the great diversification, both at the elementary and secondary, that are opportunities. So we currently have Benchmark, which is an elementary adopted curriculum but is again a little bit hit or miss on the grade level, and depending on which group that you might be looking at. So we had done this in the past in the district, but actually creating like little bundle sets that are again diverse curriculum that we think that are really great for FUSD, and where we think that the adopted curriculum of benchmark falls short. Going along with that, when teachers apply for supplemental approval for what we're seeing is amazing diversification, with a lot of non-white, non-male identifying authors, it doesn't come with the books. So it's actually still incumbent upon the teacher to figure out site funding or something else in order to get that. And so we thought that some of the funds to actually help teachers in classrooms and schools, so however the district thought was appropriate, to actually get some class sets of these amazing books that we have been approving, and using some of the funds for that. And then lastly, creating a database of materials. So this would be like teacher work groups coming together to actually harvest the things that they already have, or identifying areas we don't have, and putting them together so that district-wide we would have a database that is furthering anti-racism and are good supplements, but also in line with standards. And so we would need a systematic way to do that. So those are the recommendations we had for any additional materials that that could be funded to further anti-racism through the ELOG funds. Were there any questions about that, or Kim, did you think I still questions I guess still would be appropriate at this time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Victoria, I have a question. You mentioned a special board meeting. When is that special board meeting? Has it been calendared?
Yes, it is on May 26th. So the board will be speaking tomorrow night about expanded learning opportunity grants. So things, if the committee approves of these as recommendations, then Susan, it would be wonderful if you as chair, or Kim speaking as facilitator, would be able to share just the expanded learning opportunity grant, and then the board could express interest in one or more of those items that then could be approved on the 26th when they take their final action. All right, so I'm gonna skip 3 for now, because that will be, I'll share the slide. Oops, Ed?
Yeah, I had a quick question. So with these recommendations, these are just tasks that you're asking the board to take on, but like the exact implementation, that's something to be developed later on. Because, you know, for example, like when you say purchase class sets, you know, for all the schools, which all that stuff would have to be determined later on.
Yeah, so some absolutely, it wouldn't be our job really as an advisory body to micromanage how it pertains it, but we would be expressing what we think would improve the district, and then they could handle how to implement that. But they could also certainly ask the committee to weigh in on certain titles or certain ways that, you know, but we wouldn't be micromanaging that.
I see. Okay, thank you.
All right, so then, because we did have some folks speaking about this, we are asking that with approval of you as the committee, that the subcommittee would be able to work through the month on the definition that we're about to present to you with whatever input that you have, and then assist on any of the recommendations, kind of like what Ed was saying. We would want to be a resource to the district if we're making these recommendations, but we are just asking to close out the things that we've been working on. So if that takes us through the next month, then we would be finishing that up, because we are only directed and given given the work that you as the greater C&I committee kind of authorizes and oversees. But we are asking for approval to reconvene at the beginning of next year, as that will also be a place where existing committee members can continue on, or new potential subcommittee members might want to join. And looking at things that are still relevant, particularly as things come up that are in the realm of the school board for anti-racism. So that's our recommendation. It's within the purview of this committee to say either we have 3 things we want you to do over the summer. It's also in your purview to say, no, we think anti-racism is solved. So that's completely up to you, but that's our request to you as the committee for our subcommittee. Were there any questions on that?
Yeah, just as a note, because a little more than half of the committee rolls over each year, I would have to check into whether this year's committee has the authority to approve subcommittee work for next year, because there will be a significant number of different members there. Certainly next year's committee could reauthorize a subcommittee, but I'm not certain that this year's committee can commit next year's committee to that.
I think we could take that offline, but certainly voting bodies always have the ability to kind of move things forward, but that doesn't mean that the committee that sits down in October could say, nope, we want to change course. That's totally appropriate. But I think our feeling was that we would hate to have this work stopped completely. And considering it did take us 3 months to get going off the ground from the time we originally received the presentation, I think we wanted to just allow that. But that's our recommendation, and completely up to the committee. Any other questions on 4 before I go to our main item here? And we're looking good on time. I can't believe we're gonna actually finish up here on time.
Good work.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so then last, but absolutely not least, I'm gonna share this link with everyone, but I'll also screen share. And so this is what we are presenting as our working definition, but it is an entire presentation because we wanted to have the context for kind of our journey, and where we took input from you as the committee, from people that were writing in, submitting public comment, and other work that we had done in the district, including, having approved as a supplemental how to be an anti-racist, and the work that otherwise has been done, and building off of that. So there is a greater, there is a greater presentation. And I don't want to skip past, because Kim wisely recommended I start with overview here, and I got ahead of myself. So the overview, just so that we kind of have an idea of what the subcommittee is recommending. We really didn't want to jump ahead to make recommendations on anti-racism through curriculum and instruction before we have worked on developing a common definition, right? Because we know that certain terms don't mean the same thing to everyone, and that's always a challenge. But we thought that the first step is really to do some of this work for FUSD, leaning on some resources and things that have been relevant to our district, in addition to just some commonly accepted work in anti-racism. So
Victoria, can I stop you for a second? We are still seeing the document that's the 4 recommendations. We're not seeing your presentation.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And the print is large for me to see. Thank you.
Oh, okay, good. I was like, oh, have I gone too large now? Okay. So we can only really be prepared to look at what improvements are if we agree, on what anti-racism in curriculum and instruction is. And I do want to emphasize that this is all about improvements. So nothing, you know, it's hard for us. I'll speak for myself. I have been in Fremont for almost 2 decades as an educator, and I was here as a student for my whole career. This is not about being defensive about where we are. And I thank Trustee Prasad for just, you emphasize the positive, right? We're moving forward, and FUSD is amazing. But that doesn't mean that we always don't have a lot of work to do. So, so this is just part of that and part of our journey. So with that, so you didn't see the working definition before because I was sharing the wrong presentation. So I didn't get ahead of myself because I made a mistake. So there it is. So I'll just give you a minute there.
I guess I have a question about how you arrived at this. This is pretty intense and looks like a lot of background information. I'm wondering, did every committee member contribute, do the reading that is underlying this? How did you arrive at this? It also is not, this doesn't have to be, but this is not easily accessible to understand. It takes a lot of digestion here. And I wonder about that as a working definition.
Yeah, so you bring up a couple, specifically, I'll work backwards. We also thought a project might be that we would take up in the fall would be working on a kid-friendly kind of layout, and a few of us had read Kendi's Anti-Racist Baby, and we thought maybe a poster or something that is more kid-friendly language, but we wanted to get a pause to a product to the committee now, instead of continuing to hold off on that. But we very much echo that sentiment, Sue, that we did not think that this, for a 7-year-old, holds meaning. So we started to talk about other things that have been in writing more for children. But we thought that was actually its own separate kind of branch. And then with respect to the reading, yes, so I think so. The study session was to the school board was the resource, was one resource, for example. And if you click on the presentation, you can see all the citations. So, you know, Shilpa had provided something through a website, which came with some reading. The school board presentation to the study session is in there. How to be an anti-racist was linked in there as well, because there were some quotes pulled from that. A lot of it was public comment, so that was on the kind of the final thoughts portion. But yeah, so those were submitted by various subcommittee members. I will say that I might be the only subcommittee member that didn't contribute something new. I housed the things that were submitted to the presentation, and then just linked them down on the bottom so that everyone reading it would know kind of where those things came from. And then we pulled from there. But definitely now would be the time if there are certain phrases that you think for a, let's say a teacher or a parent would be our target audience. Those kind of phrases or suggestions we want to take, because this is not a take it or leave it. We would be noting suggestions now, and that was why our subcommittee request would just be to continue working and taking any input you have on the working document. So if there are certain things that you think are not common phrases that a parent or a teacher would understand, then that would now would be a great time. I thought I saw Waltz, but you floated. Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Okay. This is more about this is more about kind of process, not really even process, rather just connection to the equity committee. work that went into this, and there's a lot of really great, thoughtful things in here. I'm wondering how this dovetails into what the Equity Committee is doing, because quite frankly, what I would like to see is a definition of anti-racism that is across committees and that sort of thing. So it's I guess it's more just an acknowledgement that there is another committee that's doing some of this work, and just wondering how that work actually kind of, well, I keep using the word dovetail, but dovetails within each of the committees. And so how do you envision that, or how does the subcommittee actually envision that working? We don't have to talk about that right now. I know we're talking
I
about
don't mind. I love
the
process
actual word.
Well, yes. No, so it's a great point. And we could bring this forward. And what would be amazing is that the school board says just that. Yes, this is very important. And I'd like more people looking at this and frankly talking about it. I think that would be wonderful. So this does not have to be all end all. Absolutely not. We might just be the first group that is working on it. And I think that it's absolutely, there's nothing, and we do that. You'll see that kind of with resolutions. That happens with some things too, is the school board wants input from different lenses. And I think that that's really important. We did try to focus on things that we could directly say curriculum and instruction with. And so there might be a broader definition, but this does not prevent the equity team from doing more work in this area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Walt. Ed?
Yeah, I wanted to echo what Walt said, that I appreciate all the hard work in here. As a math instructor, I'm looking at this and trying to see how I would access this as a math instructor. And I see that there is still a lot of, as Walt said, there's a lot of opportunity for process and self-reflection through these statements. So I think it gives a good start. It is wordy, and it's one of those things where you have to sit down and unpack it personally, in order to reflect on my own practice and stuff. But I think it's a good start. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ed.
All right, Victoria, you're doing super well. Can you wrap it up in 1 minute, and we will be right on schedule?
So yeah, so I think if the committee is agreeable to making this recommendation from our committee to the school board, knowing that those things they could recommend it elsewhere and continue that work, then I think that's okay. But now that's the request is, can this be our initial draft from this committee as a recommendation to the school board? So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop screen share. And that concludes our 4 recommendations. So you have the list of recommendations and you have the slideshow. And then like Kim said, when we go to the recap, that would be the time to voice any objection with any of those recommendations for our summary of recommendations to the school board. Is that correct, Kim?
Yes,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Victoria.
I'm sure I speak on behalf of all the committee, just saying thank you so much to all of you who were on that subcommittee. So that would be Sid and Tushar and Shilpa, Stacy and Victoria, right? That's officially the committee. So thank you to all of you for the hours and hours that you've put in and the in-depth conversation. I know I haven't made every meeting, but I know the meetings I've participated in, you're giving this a lot of thought, and we really appreciate your work. So thank you very much.
Yes, I want to say thank you also. I attended all 3 meetings and the conversations were very deep, but a lot was accomplished. Thank you. Our next item on our agenda is our C&I update. That's going to be given by Kim.
All right, I just have one quick slide that I want to share with you, just as I am trying to keep you updated on the some of the work that's happening in the C&I department. So all year long, we've been talking about supplemental novels, and we are pleased to let you know that the board did approve 5 additional supplemental novels bringing us to a total of 12 diverse novels this year. So that is really exciting. It gives our teachers lots of different reading material to choose from to address the needs of their particular students. The other thing that was approved that we're very excited about is that our kindergarten through 5th grade social studies curriculum was approved. Our other curriculum was somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 years old and no longer in print. So this is going to be a tremendous move forward, a tremendous improvement. And we recognize that there are some places where where we can do a little bit of supplementing. And so thank you to Jamie Shimamura, who has a team of teachers working to do a little bit of supplementing on this as well. We have developed a plan for presenting information to our administrators and to our elementary liaisons, and probably to other people as well, regarding trauma-informed practices and social emotional learning. And this really just helps us understand the impact of that trauma in a child's life has on their ability to be present and open to learning, because the impact can be significant. The Board of Education, we are excited, approved an adoption of an educational response to climate emergency resolution. And within that, the Curriculum and Instruction Department is charged with making sure we begin to integrate information about climate change into certainly our science curriculum, but also our history curriculum. We may work it into math. We're just going to build it in so that as our students graduate from Fremont Unified, they are climate literate. Finally, just to keep you updated on where the core adoption team is, we are going to meet for the last time tomorrow. We have developed a process that will take us through the end of this year and into next year. We are close to finalizing the nominating document and also the rubrics that we'll use to do to analyze and determine which core novels we want to bring together into that diverse collection of core novels for our 7th through 12th graders starting next year. Well, we would be recommending it next year, starting the following year. So just wanted to let you all know what we've got going in C&I.
Wow, we're really on schedule tonight, even though we have a packed agenda. Our next item is a recap of the year, and I believe, Kim, you're going to lead us in that.
Yes. So as we've been kind of talking about, as Victoria was presenting the information from the Anti-Racism Committee, over the course of this year, we've had a chance to hear presentations and have conversations about ethnic studies, about assessment, about intervention, lots of different topics. And ultimately what we'd like to do is be able to take a set of recommendations to the board. In order to do that, what I'd like to do is put you into small groups so it's easier to have conversation. And I'm going to give you access to 2 documents in that. One of those, and I'll share it right here now. One of these is just a document that summarizes, it's not summary, it's links from presentations, from minutes. The 2 documents that Victoria shared today are linked there. And so this would be if you were to say to yourself, gosh, I remember we talked about, I don't know, for example, I remember we talked about intervention in February, but I don't really remember what we talked about. You can get back to the minutes or you can get back to the presentation. And then what I'd like to have you do, let's see if I can find it, send you into 3 groups. And this is just the document in your group where you're going to be jotting notes. We don't make final recommendations in the groups, but this would be just summarizing the conversation that you're having in your group. Everybody in room 1 will be working on slide 2, which is group 1's takeaways, and you'll figure out, or if you've got questions about where you should put it. So what I'd like to do, I would like to give you 15 minutes working in your breakout groups to kind of work through these materials and come up with some recaps. And then what we're going to come back and do is we're going to come back at 5:30 and give an opportunity to share out. And that's the point at which we'll identify which of these items we do want to have go to the board. It's about what we're going to do. Yeah, Ed.
What type of recaps do you want? Is it more like what we recall about, or our impressions about the material, or like what are some guiding thoughts about our recaps?
Because what we're ultimately going to do is potentially come up with some recommendations for the board, it might be a conversation around aspects of a presentation that you felt were compelling or that you felt might warrant encouraging further action on the part of the district. Does that help? Does that clarify? Great, thanks.
Kim, I have sorry.
What?
Sorry, we're talking at the same time. I tried to click into a couple of these presentations and it says I don't have access.
All right. I'm going to put you guys out into groups and then I will make sure you don't have access to it's mainly the presentations. Yeah. Okay. I will get out and change the sharing on those.
Kim, this is Susan. Did you want each group to have one person as a person who will share out to the larger group and one person type in the information?
Yes, it doesn't matter to me how many people type, but if they could have one person who shares, Susan, thank you. That's a great suggestion.
Okay. Thank
Krista,
you.
are you logged into your Google account? Just because it says anyone with a link should be able to access that.
I am logged into my Google account,
Interesting.
my FUSD account.
Yeah, I'm not able to get into some of them.
I'll go through and update probably the minutes you can get to, but the presentations you may not be able to. Okay.
So even I don't have access to the presentation. So hopefully one person has access and we can share and work on it.
I'll make sure everybody gets access to it. Okay. Okay, let's see here. All right, I've just had to randomly put you into rooms. I'll send you out there and we'll bring you back about 5:32-ish. Okay?
Thank you.
So in a few minutes.
Hi.
Louise here, does that mean we're getting projected?
Yeah, I'll watch my language, I promise. All right. I think I could probably volunteer to take notes if you'd like me to. I have access to the to the slide thing. So
I didn't click on
that's a technical term, I know. So there you go. But I'm happy to take notes. The world's slowest typist, though, so you'll have to talk slow. I'm a two-finger person.
I'm all talked out, so I'm going to bow out of presenting if someone would share. But we can get going, and then we can just kind of figure it out. So we have the list of the topics, right?
We do.
We do, yes.
She's making the presentations from each meeting available.
it would be ambitious to watch all of the presentations that are and flip through all of them again. So I guess I'm trying to see, just since we have our subcommittee recommendations, us that already hits on ethnic studies, and our recommendation for spending some ELOG funds to help support the supplemental novel adoption that are diverse.
I would like to see more or some of that filtered down to lower elementary school, because hitting our kids with, you know, anti-racism curriculum from the get-go, I liken to teaching them how to read and write and do math. And if we do that right from the beginning, there's hopefully fewer kids needing interventions later on. But I speak from a first and second grade teacher's point of view here.
No, and Stacy was in our subcommittee, Krista, and that's exactly why she
teaches kindergarten.
and that's why. So Benchmark is the name of the elementary adoption, and that's why she recommended a process for recommending a bundle of diverse books for across grade levels, so that each school, the grade levels would have those sort of kind of libraries to pull from as well.
I'm not sure where, I think Walter mentioned that there's a full equity committee for the board that is separate. And so I tried to look that up, and I didn't really see what they're doing. And so as a parent, I think it would be great to see that more on the forefront, especially as a full district implementation, as opposed to just putting the onus just on the curriculum side of things. Because if you can really get it from top down, then there's going to be more weight to it. If you get the full board, and then it's all put in through, even just through administration, through taking a look at systemic practices, that kind of stuff, not just in curriculum. But I know that's not our charge, because we are the curriculum and instruction committee.
Yeah, that's a great point, Ed, because now that I'm looking at the year long, we had 2 meetings on equity that kind of had that focus on equity. And the equity team was newly recomposed this year. So, but so they've had some trouble getting minutes online, but they did just load the videos this year. For in this month, they now have loaded the videos that you could watch, but that hadn't been happening for a while either. But it's because they're, we're reinventing. They came up with a new way to do it. So it's just kind of getting off the ground. And I think then the next thing, they're kind of doing some internal stuff. But yeah, I don't know if our recommendations around equity, we could have a recommendation that says that we want to maintain and strengthen, right? Like Walt is the equity team, if Walt is on the equity team, but we have Stacy as our designee. I don't know. Janie, did you have thoughts on that?
I just want to say, because I have around 5:30, but I do support the recommendation in terms of what you guys came up with in terms of the expanded learning funding, like the recommendation of those items. In terms of the recommendation of presenting kind of our curriculum instruction version of the definition of anti-racism, I personally feel like I would like to wait on that piece of it and see kind of where the direction is from the district equity team is first, before we're able to then bring forward, something from our team, our committee. So that would be something that I would like to just see us kind of continue for next year, to continue to have this conversation, and perhaps at that point the district equity team will have a more clear vision or kind of purpose in terms of what their work is going to be like, and that we can then kind of fall under their branches as one of the areas that is supporting the district-wide effort. I'm just personally hesitant on bringing something forward that it is, I think, really important, but I feel like we need to know what that district lens is, and then what our pieces are as curriculum and instruction advisory committee, and how do we support those pieces. So those are my two things that, in terms of when we go back to the main meeting, like I just don't feel comfortable yet bringing that piece forward at this point. Also too, because it's the first time that we as a whole committee has seen the recommendation from the subcommittee. So I know we got a little bit of a late start on the subcommittee, but I would like to be able to have another opportunity as a whole committee to kind of talk about the recommendations of the subcommittee before we actually bring it to the board. So those are just my personal thoughts on it.
Yeah, and something that could be instead, I guess I'm hesitant on let's wait for someone else to decide to talk about anti-racism, but I definitely understand the thought. I'm wondering if the recommendation could simply be asking for that to be an item that the equity team, so we, instead of proposing our definition to the board, we can note that that's something we've been working on and ask for the equity team to engage in that work as well, so that it wouldn't maybe get into the nitty gritty at the board level, but we would just be passing it through them and asking them to kind of agendize that for the equity team.
I would be in support of that.
Okay. Okay.
I do. I'm sorry. Am I unmuted? No, I am unmuted. Wow.
You're good.
It's a good day, isn't it? Yeah, I think I like that approach as well, because I do think it does provide that bridge between.
Oops. Well, you're breaking up.
Kind of what Ed was saying earlier. Am I still?
I know,
breaking?
you're unmuted. What about turning off video? We'll try that for a second.
Okay, let me try that. Is that a little better?
Yep.
Oh, good. Nobody needs to see my face anyway. But here's the thing. I just wanted to echo kind of what Ed was saying a little bit earlier, that the more effective, and I think we all know this, I mean, I believe we all know this, is that the more effective approach is approach where everybody has the same definitions and the same goals. I don't want to see, I'm really hesitant to support something where I think we'll be working in parallel. So I really like the idea of being able to somehow bridge that gap, because I also want to honor the work of the subcommittee, because it is truly impressive what the subcommittee in such a short time has really been able to accomplish. So my kudos to the subcommittee for doing that. Now, if there's some way to bridge that gap, that would be something I would be very supportive of. So that's all I need to say. I'm going to mute. So
I like what that attractive Mustang is saying, though, Walt. So that's good.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so that's good. So then you can have that in our notes as well, because then that could be a recommendation, because we have a couple of the meetings that we focused on anti-racism, but then we would just basically be referring our work to the equity team and asking the school board to, have them continue working on that. Bye, Jamie. Okay. Let's see. And it ties in with equity. It actually ties to it. It includes asking, showing that we value equity work and the anti-racism, engaging the equity team. So that's good.
Just to let you know, I'm going to close the rooms in about 2 minutes. So be thinking who you're going to have do your report out.
Knowing we're coming back from a year and a couple months of distance learning, I really would like to see us focus a little bit more on assessment and interventions next year, because it seems like we give an awful lot of assessments that aren't really needed to inform instruction. A lot of the assessments I give as a first and second grade teacher really just confirm what I already know about my students. And sometimes it just seems like that's a waste of time. However, if we had spent more time on intervention and how not just one school is looking at assessment to inform interventions, but maybe how some schools across the district are using iReady or whatever the other assessments we're giving.
Krista, yeah, it absolutely does. Krista, I think you were on this committee last year. Were any of you, because I feel like you guys got a presentation almost about assessment.
2 years ago, I was here.
Okay, because I feel like you guys talked about assessment and maybe over assessment.
I've been talking about that for 30 years.
Okay.
Personally.
Yeah, that was brought up a couple years ago. I remember.
Okay.
Yeah, Stacy was one of the big.
Okay.
Was very vocal about that.
I think
Okay.
it was even brought up last year.
Okay.
So
So I don't know if we could have Walt, did you have something on that?
I know the only thing that I was going to say is that, I don't really have a broad picture of what our assessment, our assessment calendar actually looks like. And I don't mean just a calendar, but, what assessments are the elementary actually doing in second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade, and what are the purposes of those? So it's kind of like an assessment inventory. And I've seen very effective work around building an assessment inventory that kind of gives a highlight of where some of those issues might be on overassessment, or quite honestly, where there's a lack of information in a particular area. I know that at least at the junior high level, there hasn't been consistent assessments. And although I think iReady is going to provide some consistent assessments, I want to know why we need to do, benchmarks A, B, C. What is the purpose of doing them? So for me, an assessment inventory, or at least a presentation on assessment calendar, would be very helpful just to get a broad perspective.
Okay. 30 seconds, huh? Krista, can you talk about the purchasing of the supplemental materials, especially because you're elementary as well?
I can do that.
Okay. Ed, did you want to talk about did you want to share we're in support of ethnic studies? And then Walt and Walt, because you could talk about equity team.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, awesome. I'm just tweaking the notes so it's a little bit more. You got everything there, so that's awesome.
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Real quick thing for group 2, if your comments didn't make it on, the chat is now gone that you had in the chat. Go ahead and add to that for group 2, slide 2.
Can you put the link to the slides back in the chat? I don't have that.
Yep.
Thanks.
But I have to say that 1 extra minute was the most productive for us.
Now we know.
I am super glad you asked for it. All right. Thank you all so much. And Luis, we can restart the recording now. Thank you. Thank you so much for the conversations. It's quite something to ask you to recap and think through an entire year of meetings and so many diverse topics in such a short period of time. And as I was in and out of the different rooms, I'll be quiet. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to have a representative from each group just sort of talk us through what your takeaways were. And we'll hear from all 3 of the groups, and then we'll figure out where we're going to go next. And I'm actually going to see if I can work in reverse order and ask if group 3, small but mighty, It's funny how Google Meet puts people in rooms and there were only 2 people in group 3. But in group 3, would you guys mind kicking us off and sharing your thoughts?
Sure. So Arun and I worked on group. We're in group 3, so we'll go ahead and share some of the ideas. One of them was that there were many voices throughout our conversations and open comment that share the importance of equity and how the curriculum should be reflective of our students and our community to create a richer experience. Also, the difference we focused on the difference between equity and equality as it relates to different groups within our community and schools, and making sure that our students are able to see themselves in the literature and in the learning experience as well. Interventions should be implemented to support students' educational and social emotional needs, as well as academic supports. And with that, we thought of the goal of supporting our students to become better global citizens for tomorrow, to think globally as they go through their academic career, and also provide students with a broader educational opportunities that will prepare them for college and career readiness. And we acknowledge that some students will go on the college route, others will go in the career routes, but we need to provide them all with the same opportunity and education. And then introduce intersectionality among different curriculum that provides a broader and meaningful learning experience for all of our students. And then we kind of ran out of time there. Aruna, do you want to share anything else?
The points that we discussed, and yeah, we ran out of time, as you said. But and ethnicity, ethnic studies that the professor presented to us from Berkeley, that was something we were discussing. But yeah, we ran out of time.
All right. Does anyone from group 1 or 2 have any questions or clarifications you'd like to ask of group 3? Okay, thank you very much, Jorge. Can I have a representative from group 2 kind of talk us through what you were thinking?
Shilpa, would you like to do that?
Sure. I will go back to the document. I guess the focus for our group was mostly happened in the last 1 minute when we started typing, but we reviewed all the presentations and took notes on the final recommendations in every presentation. And then the broad topics that came were ethnic studies using the document, and realizing that while it is offered in school, it's still not popular. So how do we change how does that change? So one option was to make it mandatory in some way. Second topic that got emphasis was environmental education. So the school gardens, that can be, the topic can be scaled up to middle and high schools. The third, I believe, that got attention was, I think, interventions. How do we support the students who continue to need support through, even if they are at level 1, then how do we move up and use it for the funds? I guess it's called the log funds. So how do we use interventions to make specific recommendations for log? And then for curriculum, how do we ensure equity of access to all the course offerings across district? And of course, anti-racism was there. And then restorative practices and how to increase the training and the use of those practices. Did I cover everything? Okay. Right.
Thank you, Shilpa. Anyone from groups 1 or 3, are there any questions or clarifications you'd like to ask of group 2? No? Okay. Then may I have a representative from group 1 share your thoughts, please?
So we're going to kind of divide this up, and I'm going to start. We talked about the curriculum, the anti-racism presentation, and I had asked about how that's going to, be pushed down to the lower elementary, thinking that when we hit our little people with good interventions and good solid instruction in reading and math, hopefully there's fewer interventions needed later, and thinking that would extend to anti-racism as well. And learned that they're talking about a set of books to be purchased for each grade level to help supplement what we sort of have already to teach that topic. So that was nice to hear that we're not just looking at novels for secondary, but also books for the primary kids as well.
We also talked about the connection between the work that was done with the subcommittee as far as equity, and also the actual school board's equity committee, and how, one thing that we would like to see is not just parallel work, but joint work, or maybe I don't know, working together, to use Walt's phrase, the dovetailing, especially when it comes to the definition of anti-racism. That definition that the subcommittee came up with was really robust and had a lot of work done in there. So we were asking if we could ask through the school board if the actual school board committee could come up with their own definition, so that we can start having a conversation that can create a unified definition.
And Ed, may I ask, was that a definition of equity or specifically of anti-racism when you guys were talking about having that joint definition?
I think it was a little bit of both, because it was just, like, what is the overall vision? It makes the work much easier if we have a unified definition across the district.
Okay, thanks.
Walt, I think you're there, Walt. Now I can't tell when you're.
Yeah, I'm here, but I thought I was talking about what Ed talked about. So, but I think our recommendation was that we had the work provided over across the or included the equity committee in this work, instead of just recommending that this is adopted by the board, rather developing that work together. But did I miss something, Victoria?
No, you're good. I wanted to highlight that Walt has been on the equity team along with Stacy. So we also just talked about maybe strengthening the relationship that we have and reinforcing that we appreciate the balance on the equity team has the different stakeholders from different committees. We want to utilize that though, right? So that the whole point is that we don't do, kind of work in tandem. And I think Ed had brought up too that we want to publicize, just like C&I. Kim, you've shared things recently that you've been putting on the website, that we're getting to see the great work that C&I is doing. We want the equity team to be putting things like that out as well. And then we would kind of know where the district is at. We very quickly said we're still in agreement with moving forward with ethnic studies. Then the other thing that came up, but I don't think we're ready to make a recommendation to the board for our annual report, but is something we wanted to spend more time on next year, was about the connection between assessment and intervention. So Walt, you had said looking at a year-long annual calendar and then knowing what's required versus what isn't, so we can maximize instruction and intervention and not do what might not be required for assessments. But we weren't ready to make a recommendation at this time, but it was something for moving forward next year we might want the committee to spend more time on.
Victoria, may I clarify and make sure I understand, when you say what's required versus not required, are you speaking of, say, priority standards?
No, like we know, like, because I did look into this, we have a lot of teachers that are like, do I really have to give that? Well, yes, because the district's required to report that. right? Like there are certain things that we don't have a say about versus as a district, and just articulating that and working more on discretion as a district, and that sort of thing, not so much the required nitty gritty of the standards.
I think the general idea is a bigger understanding of purpose-driven assessments and what the purpose of those assessments actually are. So an assessment inventory or assessment calendar can really help with that sort of thing. So as we're building, iReady assessments and that sort of thing. So,
and also meaningful assessments, giving assessment that's actually going to give us data that we might not already have from 2 or 3 different places.
Does anybody in groups 2 or 3 have questions for anyone in group 1? Okay, then here's what I'd like to propose. I would like to propose that we address this in kind of 2 pieces. I feel like there's a level of urgency around the recommendations that came from the Anti-Racism Task Force regarding recommendations for the Learning Opportunity Grant, because those financial decisions are going to be made in the next 2 weeks. So I would propose we deal with that as probably our most urgent decision as a committee. Are we moving forward the recommendations of the Anti-Racism Committee? That'd be one thing. The other thing then is I would ask if it was okay with you if Susan and I took your input and compiled our report for the board and then shared it back out with all of you so that you could see it and make comments on it before we shared it with the board, because there just isn't quite as much urgency necessarily about that as there is about this funding that's going to be decided in the next 2 weeks. Does anybody have an objection to us dealing with this in 2 pieces like that? Okay, then may I step back to the recommendations, and I'm going to just quickly present. I'm going to go back to the recommendations from the Anti-Racism Committee, particularly around item 2, which was the Learning Opportunity Grant. And can you see that? Okay.
Could you please enlarge it, Kim? I'm sorry.
Yep.
Thank you.
How does that work? Is that big enough?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so we'd be looking here at these items. So the committee recommended that we recommend investing in ethnic studies, determining a process. Yeah, yes, Sue, go ahead.
Oh, I was just, when you're done, I have a comment on this. So if you want to continue to review it.
I don't need to read it to you guys. You can all read it. Go ahead and make your comment.
I am in favor of some of this, but not all of it. I'm not in favor of allocating the money for the supplemental novels for a variety of reasons. I think we are so far behind on our core curriculum adoptions, and I think that some of that Learning Opportunity Grant might be able to be used there. So I'm not in favor of, we are like 5 years behind on our science adoptions. So I like the idea of investment into ethnic studies. I like the idea of development of anti-racism instructional materials database. I'm not convinced on B and C. That's my input.
Thank you.
Kim, can I ask a question, since I think you're the best person to answer this? Because expanded learning opportunity grants are, for this upcoming year, are we able to use, and do we have slated to adopt, for example, the recommendation of utilizing it for a science curriculum, which might not be expanded learning, but is kind of the base level learning for students? Could we then, if we recommend that sort of thing for that reason. Is that something that we might have slated that I didn't see anything proposed yet, but that you might know that that's going to be recommended to the board with these funds.
Sue, I see your hand is up. Do you want to respond to Victoria? Okay. So I don't know the exact parameters and the exact edges of what this money can be spent for. So I'd need to do a little bit of research to find out if something like core curriculum like that, given that we are woefully behind and given that the NGSS standards increase the equity of our science education, could that then be connected to the Learning Opportunity Grant? I would have to check into that and see.
Also, I noted in there the SEL adoption is something that would be part of the Learning Opportunity Grant.
Yeah.
Trustee Prasad, I see your hand.
Yeah, so I think if you see the presentation on the proposals for that will be discussed tomorrow, these are buckets of money that need to be created, and the details of how the money should be spent. There'll be time to get feedback and iron out the details, right? So from what I see here, if the novel adoption of funding novels is a proposal, as long as there's a bucket of money for materials for classroom, then the decision on where that should be spent can happen over time.
So what I'm hearing you say is what I'm perceiving as real urgency in having that level of detail to the board by tomorrow night or the next week. You're saying probably there isn't quite that level of urgency because at this point we're approving buckets, and then exactly what comes out of each of those buckets will be determined over time. Am I understanding correctly?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Susan, I saw your hand come up, and then Shilpa.
Yes, I have a clarifying question. So with the expanded learning opportunity grant, is that a one-time allocation of monies, like say next academic school year, or does the grant go over a period of a couple years? Can anybody help clarify that? Because that makes a determination also.
It's a yes to both of those things. It's one time, but it has to be spent within the next couple of years.
Okay.
Shilpa. Shilpa, we can see you.
Sorry. I didn't realize that there was when we were discussing this, we didn't realize that there was a gap for the core curriculum. So if that is so, then yes, that probably does take priority. But I was wondering if there's a way, and I understand that right now it's just buckets, the fine tuning will happen later. But I was just wondering if there's a way that items A and D can be flagged as a priority so that if, you know, for example, if we cannot buy the class sets, maybe if there's even something as simple as a district-wide Padlet or something that teachers have access to, that the tried and tested materials can be put in there. So if the teachers need it, they can just download and print it out for their classroom. So even if they don't buy class sets, at least the task of researching goes away. Then it's just a matter of printing it and distributing it.
All right, so what I'd like to do so we can wrap this up, because unfortunately at 6 o'clock I have to jump to the Equity Committee, and I know a lot of people do as well. Would anyone like to make a motion regarding which of those items we do want to recommend immediately to the board and which ones we want to recommend as the buckets are ready to be defined?
This is a referral motion from the subcommittee, so it is being referred to all four. So if there's a voting member who wanted to amend and remove any of these four, then now would be the time. Otherwise, we would just vote. But it would be okay to amend if someone wanted to. Otherwise, we make the recommendation for all four. I think what Trustee Prasad is noting, though, is our B and C might be more general and actually incorporate Sue's, which would be recommendations to purchase curriculum that are looked at with an anti-racism lens. And that may be core curriculum, and it might not be as detailed as B and C, but I think that we understand kind of the intent there.
Susan, raise your hand up because you wanted to say something. All right, well,
Sorry, no,
I
forgot to take my hand down. I apologize.
All right. Is there? So it sounds like we have one of two choices. We can go ahead and have a second and a vote on the 4 that the committee recommended, or we can have an amendment, a second, and then a vote on that.
I move to be the second on improving this subcommittee recommendation.
Is it too late for discussion for one more comment?
Now is the time for discussion, now that there has been a second.
So these are too specific for me for B and C to move forward, and with the understanding that they would be okay for any kind of equity or diversity. That is sending a message in my mind that we prioritize these diverse supplemental novels for secondary sites, which I do prioritize, but in terms of buckets, that's not the message that I want to send, and I understand that I'm just one vote.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve all 4. And what we would need to do now, I believe, is vote on that. And if it passes, we move forward. And if not, we can start with a different motion. Victoria, I see your hand, and I'm going to run out of time here.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kim. I just want to speak briefly, and the costs that we had looked at in supplementals before, for at the elementary was well under $1 million, and did help with that supplemental material. I would, in trying to make progress through anti-racism and diversification, I will hesitate to, when we hear, well, there's always something else that we should be spending the money on. So just personally, I would like to put this out there as a recommendation, and it doesn't have any specific dollar amount allocated to it. And overall, the ELOG funds is over $20 million. And these recommendations all together would, could be about 1 million of it. But I do think that they're important for the school board to consider.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. What I'd like to have you do is use the raised hand feature that's down at the bottom. If you are in favor, and Sue, your hand is up already, so I don't know if so if you are in favor of the motion that's on the floor, which is to approve all 4 of these, please raise your hand. So I see we have 6 yeses, and that means we have 1.
Oops, I see 7.
7 yeses, right? So that would leave us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 no's. So
we're voting because there can be abstentions, so we don't assume no votes. So we do need to ask for no.
I'm sorry, is there? Okay, so put your hands down, you yeses. If you are a no, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm seeing 5 no's. So with a vote of 7 to 5, the motion carries. So we will take the recommendation of all 4 of those to the Board of Trustees. I want to go ahead and just close up our meeting today. First of all, by just saying thank you so much to everyone who has been serving on this committee. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your thoughtful input and your willingness to grapple and your willingness to skip like a stone across topics rather than sinking to the deep bottom of the lake. And we know it's a deep lake for every single one of these. As I mentioned, we do have a number of our members who are